Hello and welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute delight to be joined by the fabulous Marc Hoberman. Marc, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And before we get stuck in, and I know it's going to be a fascinating conversation, let me share with the wider audience a little bit more about you. So Marc is an educational consultant, a best-selling author and a motivational speaker. He's the CEO and founder of Grade Success Education. He's a certified life coach and an expert in SAT and ACT test prep. His memoir earned top 50 human interest stories of 2017 on WCBS radio. Marc has presented at schools, camps, parent groups and corporations. His shows Lighting the Educational Flame and Life Stories with Marc Hoberman have featured guests including presidential candidates, professional athletes, Grammy Award-winning artists, Tony Award nominees and leading educators. From the classroom to the boardroom, Marc continues his passion for helping people reach their full potential. Marc, wow, I mean, that's quite a lot that you've packed in. Could you bring that journey to life a little bit for us?
Sure. So I started teaching, I think I was about 22 years old in the Bronx, New York. Very tough neighborhood. Kids, many of them had single family homes. Through my whole career, 78% of my students have been free and reduced lunch. So it's been a very needy group of students, which I loved. They're needy of love, they're needy of attention and structure. But rewind, sometimes we say fast forward, rewind, probably 6 years before that, I lived in Yonkers, New York for 16 years. And then my parents came in and said, Dad is semi-retiring, we're going to Florida in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So, it was a little rough. I had a lot of friends. I was popular. I was the first clarinetist in the band. What a chick magnet. I mean, so cool. But a little depressing. And I must have had the tendency, we didn't know, but I was with my cousin visiting her brother, my other cousin, very early in the morning, 5 a.m. I said, let's visit him at college. It's a 4-hour ride. I want to get there at 9 a.m. and start the day. I became incoherent on the ride and then passed the same exit 3 times. And once we got towards a toll booth, I had a full-blown epileptic seizure. The beginning was what we call a petit mal seizure. Didn't know I had epilepsy. Slammed on the gas pedal, not the brake. This is what my cousin told me. I wasn't officially conscious and could have died if she didn't steer us through the toll booth. Came home 2 hours later with a diagnosis of epilepsy. And I'll tell you, Kim, the problem is that I didn't share it with anybody. You're talking 40 years ago, a little more than that. And that was the problem. I was suffering. I didn't go to a psychiatrist, but I could tell you now, after being in education almost 40 years, I was depressed and probably clinically depressed. Very tough. Had seizures on the medication. Didn't tell anyone until I want to say 36, 37 years later when I wrote my memoir, Adversity Defeated, Turn Your Struggles into Strengths. So it's not a book about epilepsy. It's a book about adversity. My adversity just happened to be epilepsy. It could be from bullying. It could be from drug abuse. It could be from so many other things. And I've helped people and co-authored some other books, always nonfiction, really like self-help in that way. So the sadness in that was the saddest for others more than me. I did suffer, but when I was teaching, there were no health protocols as far as privacy. So we got big buckets that told us all about our students. And I saw that many of my students through the years had epilepsy. I saw 3 of them were on the same medication I was on, coming in, suffering, bleeding from the gums, from the side effects. And I was in my early 20s, but how selfish of me not to take them aside. I had a good rapport with the kids and say, hey, I know what you're going through. I have it too. I saw it as a weakness. And it took me so long in life to realize it wasn't a weakness. It was my superpower. I was able to do things and accomplish things and get through things faster and a little more easily than other people because of my experiences. When I started the book 10 years before I published it. Life got in the way, but when my son came down with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, my son Scott, I have a son Craig, I have a son Scott. Scott was suffering. And my wife said, you're really helping him. You're finding the right doctors, but you don't seem very emotional about it. And I was very methodical because I suffered as a teen as well. And I was able to help my son where my parents really couldn't help me. There were no books like mine. There was no internet. What took me 2 months of going to libraries and learning about my illness, you could do in 45 minutes on the internet today. I went in the back room to the periodical section, looked up stuff on microfiche. No students of mine know what that is. They think, is that a small fish? No, not microfiche. It's microfiche. They have no idea. So I did my due diligence then, but for 2 years, my mother had a stroke when she was 39, very strong woman. And when I was diagnosed, she said, listen, you're a good-looking boy, you have friends, you're funny, and guess what? You're also an epileptic, and it's going to keep you grounded, and you're going to learn from it. And I did follow her advice, but not for many years later, and I need to shortcut it for other people. That eventually, the book got me on podcast radio shows. You read from CBS Radio that in 2017, gave my book best top 50 human interest stories of that year. The accolades were great and everything, but really helping people was more important. And I was on 70, 80 podcasts and radio shows. And finally, I got a publicist, and she said, why don't you do your own podcast, your own talk show? I said, no, I don't want to be on camera, and thank you very much. And she said, you got to do it. You got to do it. I did 2 or 3 that were terrible. Then you find your own way. And I really loved it. And I have life stories with Marc Hoberman, and had celebrities. I've had people who've suffered. Mine isn't Hollywood-ish. It's more tell us the story behind the glory. So long-winded answer, but that was a 40-something year answer. So I shortened it for you.
Wow, I love that. And there's so many bits in there that I'd love to delve into. I mean, particularly that you know what you've taken from that incident, and then the having to come to terms with it first. So you shared that although you did have epilepsy and you could see with the children in the early days, and you had the rapport, but you weren't at that point ready to admit yours and therefore step into that space of helping them, because that, I would imagine, could have felt like an additional vulnerability, like sharing that when you're just coming to terms with it yourself. But the fact that you overcame that and you wrote the book and then were able to utilize your lived experience to support Scott with his lived experience, which, whilst different, there was so many, there must have brought so much back for you because of knowing how you felt with a diagnosis and all the challenges that come around that in those crucial teenage years, which already come with so much for our children to have to navigate and kind of learn and understand. And as parents, we want to protect them from all of that, don't we? And when we see them going through something where we've had a similar experience, being able to help him must have felt like a real gift from the challenges that you'd faced in the past.
Well, definitely. And you touched on a lot of things there. There's the physical aspect of the illness and the emotional. The physical, thank God, wouldn't have killed me. The emotional could have.
Yeah.
Because, listen, when I was about 26, the doctor said, you probably had your first seizure when you were 13. I fell down in the basement of our apartment building, but nobody saw it. So they didn't know it was a seizure. They thought I was sick and it was too hot in the laundry room, whatever. But he said, we should experiment with taking you off the medication. If you don't have a seizure for 16 or 18 months, it means you're seizure free. Went off the medication, and 16 months went by, nothing. And I went to school one day, became incoherent because I wasn't under protection of the medication, had a full-blown seizure. Normally, it's an hour or 2 with the petite mal, so my parents would know the warning was there. You only had a 2 or 3 minute warning because I wasn't on medication. And I had the full-blown seizure in the school. It was in the Bronx. I fell down, chipped my tooth, was bleeding. They closed the school for an hour, and the police had to show up because they thought that I was stabbed. Because I didn't put on my medical report as a teacher that I had epilepsy. And that was God's way of telling me, maybe you could tell people now. And I still did not. I came back and I told people it was a bad reaction to a medication. That was my chance to do it. So, shame on me for that, but I guess better late than never. But helping parents through this, that's why my tutoring agency takes on a different education space, a different turn, because I have that sixth sense. I know when people are suffering. I know how to help them. Can't help everybody, but I know what's going on, especially in that teenage brain. And you said it yourself, so much angst, hormones as a teenager, moving on 3 weeks' notice. And then in states, there were certain laws. In Florida, you couldn't drive unless you were seizure-free for 6 months. Now, there were times I was seizure-free for 6 months, but not in a row. So, having that 1977 gorgeous Mustang in the driveway that I couldn't drive. You walk outside every day and it's a constant reminder to your brain. Very difficult. Had there been a book like this or somebody I knew like me, or the internet and blogs and things I could do to research it, or for my parents. I mean, when I was about to hit the post button to say the book was out, my wife came down and she said, "You've been staring at the screen for 30 minutes. What are you doing?" I said, "Nobody knows I have this." When I hit the button, 1,000 people are going to know I had relatives. My aunt called me. "Oh, Mark, you're such a great fiction writer. Who knew it?" I said, "This isn't fiction." She said, "What do you mean it's not fiction? You don't have epilepsy." I said, "Yes, I do." My father, her brother, never told her because it was poo-pooed then. And quite honestly, it was seen by a weakness by people. And, to have almost 40 years, have you realize that your strength is not easy, but at least we got here.
But I think often, life only really makes sense in the rearview mirror. It's only when we look back that we can go, okay, so that's why that happened and that happened. And that's why these bits came together. And I think, we like to belong. We like to fit in because everybody, society's telling us we should fit in, we should belong, we should be the same. And so if we ever have anything about us that means we might not, we can be prone to try and hide that, to try and mask it, to try and hope nobody finds out under the proverbial carpet. But actually, to your point, once we own it and acknowledge it, we realize actually that is our unique strength, that is our gift in the world. And you said, when you had the second seizure and chipped your tooth, you thought, maybe that was God's way of saying you've got to do something now. And even though you still didn't take that, I think often, what I've identified in life is, if you don't take the lesson, it will get repeated. It's like, come on, I'm trying to show you something here. And that can be frustrating. And then when you do get there, you can look back and go, well, I should have done this sooner. But actually, how many people don't get there at all? So I know you said, shame on you for not doing it sooner, but actually, I would say be proud of yourself that you did get there, that you did take that leap. Because it doesn't matter how long it took us. It matters that we get where we're supposed to go, doesn't it? And that we learn from that, and that you're able to now take that lived experience and help other people with more of a. You made me smile when you were talking about microfiche. I remember that from doing homework when I was younger. But anybody I talk to now, it's like, huh? What on earth is that? I'm like, yes, I'm that old. I'm that old. But I mean, that's kind of part of why we get into these things, isn't it? Doing podcasts, doing the books, is to say, well, it might have taken you 40 years to learn this, but you can now distill it in 40 minutes.
Oh, definitely. And I guess I felt guiltier because I was dealing with young people.
Yeah.
I've since expanded to, I do a lot of corporate training, school training, and also day camps. But a lot of times I'm training the adults, I'm training the teachers, and in corporate, obviously, you're training the CEOs and the salespeople and the team as well. But these experiences help me impart the information that's a little different from some other consultants or presenters and things of that nature. And plus, the teaching aspect has a little twist as well.
Yeah, and I love that, because I think the one thing that connects us all and kind of is that we teach and we learn through stories. So when we can share our lived experience, our story, it makes it easier for people to understand the lessons that are in there. And then you've obviously got that additional piece of having taught for so many years. So you've got all of the teaching knowledge and all of that information, as well as this ability to bring that to life in a way that people are going to be able to take on board and then action for themselves. So, I mean, you've learned loads from doing your coaching and teaching and consulting. I'm interested as well with your podcasts. What would you say you've learned from creating and hosting life stories with Marc Hoberman?
We're all more similar than we are different. I've had Academy Award winners on the show, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees. And when I ask the question, what's the story behind the glory? What's the struggle? You really can't believe it. Everybody thinks the glitz and the glamour. They woke up, here I am, where's my movie set? And there's just so many no's and there's so much rejection, and you have to have perseverance, and you can't let people get in your head. So what I've learned most is everybody from whatever walk of life. I've had Olympians and athletes. They all have a journey, and nobody has all positive experiences. Nobody has all negative experiences. How you handle them, your attitude, that's where the gold is. And I really try to help people learn that sooner rather than later. But the show has really helped me connect with people on a different level. I was like a celebrity stalker. If I saw a celebrity, I was diving for that leg. Give me a picture, give me an autograph. I'm still impressed with them, but they're just like us. And it's not just celebrities. I've had other people who are not world renowned and not even well known, but have such amazing stories and also help people. I have authors who have a lot of self-help books. So it's great to see so many people out there, but we're so similar. Whether you're in one country, I'm in the United States, it doesn't matter. People are people.
Oh, I love that. It's so true. I think deep down we are all the same. And we have different elements, but there is a lot of commonalities. And I think for me, that's been one of the beauties of doing this show is actually identifying how many commonalities there are, as well as the differences, and being able to embrace both. And that kind of helps us all fit in better, doesn't it? And feel that better sense of belonging that I think we're all seeking. And sometimes we try and find that by fitting a particular mold, but actually we can instead learn to grow into that space where we fit in, because we've got an element of commonality, and also that we've got an element of individuality, and that the two together make the collective greater. So what would you say, Marc, has been your greatest lesson so far in your journey?
There's been a couple, but they all gel together. So the mantra of my book and a lot of my talks, if I talk about overcoming adversity, is don't let your struggles define you. You define you. It wasn't until I made epilepsy my friend, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, that I started to learn more. Also, you can't let people rent space in your head. And in my years, I would let people rent space with an option to buy. I mean, they took a big rental property, and you can't allow that. And it's so easy, but then not. But once you see how well it works, then that's where the magic comes in. So, really learning from your mistakes, learning from others. Scientifically, it's not possible to listen if you're talking. You can't do both. So I do a lot of talking. I do a lot of talking on these shows. I do a lot of talking in presentations. Most of mine are interactive. But it's really the biggest thing I learned is I say to people, here's the terrible news. Here's the great news. The terrible news. You can never, ever control everything. Never. Here's the great news. You can always control your attitude about everything. So that's and I'm still changing. So those are the things that gel together. And quite honestly, if you see here, there's a little ray of light coming in. I left that there on purpose because some people don't let the ray in. They like to focus on the negativity. And some people get good at it. And some people, I don't want to say in a sick way, in a sad way, thrive off of the sadness sometimes and thrive off of wallowing in self-pity, which is very easy to do. I did it for 2 years as a teen. My parents did it. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have people couldn't help us with a struggle they didn't know we had. We didn't tell anybody. So it's a long answer, but it's kind of shaped my life and helps me shape the life of other people. I bring it into my training, into the corporate world, into the school setting.
I love that. It always reminds me, one of my favorite quotes is, I'm not a victim of my circumstance, I'm a product of my choices. Because I think in everything we have choice. even if that choice is only how we choose to behave. We might not be able to choose anything else, but there is always something we can choose, which is very often our attitude. And that's the bit that speaks volumes about us, doesn't it? If that's the piece that is the only real thing that we've got that's in our gift to be. And so I love that, in the journey that you've had and in the lessons that you've had, it's taking back the pen. I loved that. Not letting people rent space or take over the parts of your head. I've often believed that we should be the author of our own life, but every now and again we need to remember that and take back the pen. Go, hold on, that's not the story I want to write for this. And actually, I don't need you in my head. I need to get back in my own head and make that journey. But how do you do that? How do you take back that pen? How do you kick out those renters and go, right, your tenancy is now over, and I'm moving back in?
Yes, excellent question. So I will tell you, it's phenomenally easy after it's been phenomenally difficult. So nothing this powerful can happen overnight, but it doesn't take years and years. But it takes many months because if I gave a presentation and 98 people emailed me and said, my God, the best presentation I ever saw, I loved it, and 2 people said I was bored, I would almost have a panic attack. I mean, who does that? 98 too? You're not going to please everybody. That was always very difficult. So you have to implement it in every single situation. If a family member gets sick, I go into help mode. What can I do? Don't wallow in it. Information is king. Knowledge is power. So I didn't know anything about epilepsy other than the fact that I had it. So I didn't know anything about IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, that my son had until we looked it up and learned about it. So let the ray in, let others in, but you start to learn. You can't forget it. You can't say, oh, that friendship's over. I can't believe how it ended, and wallow in that. You have to take it, discuss it in your own brain, have your time to wallow or be upset, and then put it in the rearview mirror folder, because something wonderful is going to happen tomorrow. Something bad is also possibly going to happen tomorrow. This is what life is. But again, you can always control your attitude. And knowing that what happened over here, it happened. I can't unmake it happen. How much am I going to let it take over my life? And then in the beginning, sometimes these thoughts still do get into your head. But where's that finish line? And as you start to chip away at these things, Kim, as you start to learn to do this, it becomes automatic. I'm lucky that my mother gave me all gifts. She gave me epilepsy because her uncle had it. I have diabetes. My mother had diabetes. I'm in very good control. I'm on the same 2 medication for 12 years. Why am I not on insulin? Because I went to nutritionists, because I went to people who told me how much to exercise, and I went to learn more about how I can make it better. So I'm on the same 2 pills for years, as I said. But when I was diagnosed with diabetes, I'm telling you, this is the truth. It was the same as if the doctor said to me, pass the ketchup. It meant nothing to me, because I knew that, okay, I'm going to find out whatever this is, it is. I'm not going to unmake it. But how can I make this not debilitating? What do I have to do to make it better? So because of my experiences with being diagnosed as a teen, very difficult, I can put these things in the correct category, and I can really control my attitude. Do I take a step or 2 back? I'm supposed to be an expert in this. Sure, I do. I sometimes take 4 steps back, but the resilience kicks in. And you talk about choices. Another business I have is the Power of Choices with my partner, Daniel Echevarria, and we go into schools and we help people with choices. Everything is a choice. You make 10,000 decisions a day. When you reach for the pen, your brain is saying, should I reach for this pen? So it takes time, but it starts to become a superpower, and you're almost laughing inside that, hey, I'm going to be able to handle this. When you knew 10 years ago, you wouldn't be out of bed for 3 days.
I love that, because I think you are taking that learned experience and then, utilizing it. I remember having a friend of mine wouldn't say to me, I can't decide if you're incredibly strong or incredibly stupid. Whenever anything went really horribly wrong, things that illnesses or that would probably floor people. She says, you just keep going. And I said, well, I've realized that there's lots of things I can't control. So what I do in a situation where I can't control anything else is look at what thing can I control,
Right.
and do that. I said, I cling to that thing like it's the life raft in the messy waters of my brain.
Right.
Until, funnily enough, you find another thing that you can do. Marc, it's been such a delight, and I want to make sure we get a chance to share with the audience how they connect with you. So you've already shared such amazing insight and lived experience, for which I'm super grateful. But can I ask you, if you could go back and ask your younger self for some advice, what would it be?
Great question. It would have to be to learn more, learn faster. And I'm a teacher. I'm not speaking academically. Learn from others, understand that you will never have all the answers, but all the answers are out there. So I would have been more reflective. I would have jumped into strong attitude and coping mode, but I didn't have those coping mechanisms. And I've done this for people who are 12 years old when it comes to certain, tutoring and stuff. So certainly don't hold back. And it's okay to show your weaknesses. Not easy for adults or kids, because at the end of the day, what you have to learn is if people make fun of you, if people don't accept you for who you are, good. You did a good thing. You shortcut it. Better to find out now than 8 years from now when you really need them.
I love that. That whole piece around trusting yourself and being okay to be who you are without the fear that that means you won't fit in. And I loved that part as well about that it's okay to learn early. Some people are here for the book. Some people are here for a chapter. Yeah. Some people are here for a couple of pages. And actually, once we understand that, it all makes sense. Then actually we can be more in control of how much negative emotion we allow to creep in versus how we take away the lessons and focus on the where next. So Marc, how can people get in touch with you and who do you help?
Sure. So they can go to info@gradesuccess.com. And I have two websites that would be very helpful for academics. It would be gradesuccess.com. That's the tutoring company behind me. But then a very informative site is marchoberman.com, marchoberman.com. So the education aspect takes on many different roles. The Grade Success Education was really the tutoring, academic life coaching, SAT prep, ACT prep, college essays, things like that. But then it's the umbrella over what I do in schools, which is study skills for health and wellness and to reduce stress. That's for the kids. I do classroom management for teachers and lesson planning. But what I'm having a lot of fun with is, and I do a lot of anti-bullying too, is being in the corporate sector. And I finally realized a few years ago that the 45-year-old bully is the same bully he was when he was 11. He just got a little bit more of a gut and more power and became a little bit meaner. So I do a lot of that. But what I really am enjoying is working on a book I'm working on, The Power of Leadership Loyalty, which is, it's going to be 7 pillars of how to ignite your team. I love team building. That's from my camp experiences in school. I love communication skills and really teaching CEOs back and forth that if you think you value your workers, your employees, but they don't think you do, then you don't. So perception is reality. So I love that training. And the reason I do like it, Kim, I'll tell you this in closing, is that I deliver it as a teacher. So everything's interactive. I am not plug and play. Because if you were plug and play in the schools I taught in, they would either, fall asleep or jump out the window. So that's kind of the people that I help. It's all under that improvement of a company, improvement of yourself, improvement of your attitude and habits.
I love that. I love the fact that actually, the 45-year-old is just the young bully growing up, and I think that is for all of us. We are all just our own unhealed inner child, unless we continue to do the work on how we develop that. And I'll make sure that obviously in the notes below for everybody watching and listening, there will be all of those contact details of how you can connect with Marc and work together. Marc, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing such insight.
Thank you so much. I'll also see at marchoberman.com the books that I've written and co-authored. So thank you so much for having me on, your thoughtful questions. It was really great speaking with you. Thank you.
Well, bless you. Thank you. And to everybody listening and watching, I hope you found it as interesting, insightful, and inspiring as I have. And until next time, take care.